have 8 present.
Okay. So in the order of Chairman's remarks, I just again want to welcome Anthony McPherson. I believe you were here for the last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. But I met with Anthony recently regarding this group, regarding Hexagon. I must say I've been very impressed and appreciate your going on to meet with all of the police chiefs, discuss their concerns, and address those concerns. I think it's absolutely true. So thank you for that. And the record should reflect that we have friends who's just joined us. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item number 5, which is the, I'm sorry, 4. Oh, I always forget public comment. Do we have any?
We never have it. We never have it.
There being no public comment, now we can move on to item number 5, which is approval of the minutes. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes are approved. We can move on to item 6, right? 6A, which is the adoption of the Police Records Management System Oversight Committee 2022 meeting schedule. Assuming everybody's had a chance to look at the dates for 2022. So looking for a motion in a second. A motion in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the meeting schedule will be approved. We'll move on to item 6B, which are budget transfers. That being an adjustment total of $251,279 to account for reimbursement from the PRMS Operations Fund to ETSB Equalization Fund for the RSA consultant. Any discussion? All right.
Maybe just a
Yes,
general question
sure.
about how they're performing and meeting expectations and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Dave, who works with them directly. I've heard a lot of good things, but Dave actually has the direct insight. So I'll see.
What was your question?
Just how the consulting is
Yeah.
performing.
The RSA?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. The RSA has been probably one of the best things we've ever decided to bring on. We've gone through, we're on our second RSA. The first one was quite good. The second one that we have now, his name is Steve Burrell. He actually has quite a bit, 25 plus years of experience in law enforcement in Illinois. This place kind of up north of here. So he's brought a new level of understanding, and it really helps to bridge the gap between my team and Hexagon's team. And that's really where the value's been, is being able to have that back door into Hexagon and having that person there that can get things moving, can get us information. Whereas before the RSA, we weren't able to get that. So it's been a positive, very positive.
Yeah, and I like that. So I've reached out to Hexagon about just providing better support overall to the chief, the police department, as well as the chief's attorney's office. And we're creating a more comprehensive model. The RSA will focus on operational activities like he does now, but they're also going to provide project support to balance things out. So we'll have a resource to help us when we go live with new software rollouts or upgrades, and then we'll have Steve to manage the day-to-day responsibilities. So.
This is a budget adjustment, but it's not a change to the contract. This is just kind of making the two match.
The line item, charge to the right line item in the county budget.
Okay, fair enough.
Dave, is there a tangible way we can measure success in this new position?
Well, I think
Go ahead, sir.
so. I think that we can create some kind of metric. Maybe the number of tickets resolved on a monthly basis, something like that to keep track of what he does and how successful he is with those things.
And that's kind of why I paused. I'm thinking of how to do it. We don't currently have a metric set up, but we can create something and develop something for it. It's a little hard to define because a lot of it is just that personal interaction and conversations and talks like and stuff like that. But I'll work with Member McPherson and develop something there. So we can.
I think we could probably come up with 1 or 2 metrics that we track on either a monthly or quarterly basis.
Okay.
The RSA does provide us with a weekly report as well, so you can see his activity. It's included in the ETSB's monthly report and all of the reports that Sarah sends out to you on a monthly basis.
Well, I guess I'd look to you to determine what measures we would use to determine effectiveness, if it's turnaround time on outstanding tickets or, and I don't think it's his day being full. I think it's more of,
Performing.
some type of tangible performance measurement that we could look at and say, okay, the work's getting done, it's being addressed quickly, the outstanding issues are being resolved
Maybe
in
it's
X amount of time. Or
maybe it's a tie into the focus group that's still active and can have some type of idea of what they're looking for to meet their expectations.
Yes, in the past, we haven't had the RSA kind of with the user focus group specifically, just because the way the support structure is, because my staff is kind of our frontline support. The RSA is our kind of frontline with Hexagon.
Okay.
But we're going to rethink that and get the RSA into more involved there, trying to mitigate people going around or going directly to him. But we're going to look at ways of bringing him more into that so that the users have a better sense of what he does.
Try to shift from being more proactive to being more reactive to proactive.
Yes, and what's really kind of opened my eyes to this one is with Steve Burrell coming into this position and having the knowledge that he has about law enforcement in Illinois and reporting requirements. He's brought a lot of good thoughts to the table that I want to get in front of the user group to discuss that out with him. So we'll be doing that moving forward next year.
Great question. Thank you.
Looking for a motion in a second then to approve the transfer.
make the motion.
Second. In a second, we need to do a roll call on this.
Moranowitz.
Yes.
Martinovich.
Yes.
McPherson.
Yes.
Bender. Scalera.
Yeah.
Vesta. Zerwin.
yes,
Berlin.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Cronin.
Yes.
Fieldman. Franz.
Yeah.
All eyes.
All right. Motion carries. We'll move on to item 6C, which is approval of the amended PRMS Oversight Committee rules.
yeah, but we got a second
So,
first.
okay,
Yeah.
so we have a motion. I need a second too. And a second. Any-
Sure.
Yes,
Second,
Go
I
ahead.
would recognize to make an amendment to these.
please.
We did notice that there was one sentence that was meant to be deleted in section 10, subparagraph B. That sentence is except for removal for cause as set forth in paragraph C, the PRMS Oversight Committee shall determine the existence of a vacancy. So I moved to strike that sentence in addition to the changes that are already present.
Okay. Have a second on that? Motion second.
Well,
I mean, just on the amendment.
I was gonna say, I would suggest that the amendment, I would do a voice vote, but on the main one, I
Yeah.
would probably take the
Yes.
full vote.
So on the amendment, all in favor of approving the amendment to the rule? The amendment to.
Are we gonna open this up for discussion at some point?
We are, but this is just the amendment. So we do a voice vote, just the amendment that he just made.
Have a motion to approve the amendment?
I
We
moved
have
if
a
there's
motion and a
second.
second.
So we just need a voice vote.
So we can do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So now we have the actual overall amendments to the rules that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give some context to this, just so everybody knows what's going on. The reason that we propose these changes is currently the structure is set up to where individuals have to go through the county board to be approved. That doesn't really make sense for how we do it in this process. 6 of these positions are either elected officials or a county staff, or the other 6 done by the DMMC. So the DMMC already has their own approval process on how to get that representation. It doesn't really make sense, and it sometimes stalls us from having that representative on this committee. So this is kind of streamlining it a little bit more and making it easier. So you'll see that that's the first aspect of this is indicating, who's on the committee. The second is the terms of office. The terms of office will coincide with their elected official date if it's on the county side, and or if they're the county employee, it'll be for the term of their service or in that employment position. And on the DMM side, it'll be a 4-year commitment as it had been already, commencing in December 1st, which again is the same thing. We're just codifying the actual practice that we did. So that would be the reason that these were presented. It also assists with, again, streamlining the key thing here. It's just one less appointment.
Any discussion?
Has DMMC reviewed these proposed changes?
I didn't give it to Suzette, but I figured seeing as though it's already the process of what we're doing, it wasn't necessary. It's just what we do and what the rules said were a little different. So I wanted to make it to just be the practice that we're doing.
I got just one question.
Sure.
Not that I have any interest in serving for multiple terms, but and not that I don't want to serve for multiple terms either. I want to cover myself and look. In section 10A, are we making a change there where it is just one term? Or am I reading too much into that? Good, we might have had an unintended consequence there.
All appointees shall serve to the end of the term or until their successor is appointed.
I don't think that it
I don't think
makes
that
it to
does that.
where you can't be
Yes.
reappointed. I don't think that'd be the case based on what I'm reading, but
I
I
agree.
defer to the state's attorney's
No, I
office.
totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, there's no prohibition on being reappointed.
Okay.
But what it says is that they'll serve until the end of your term or until there's a successor appointed.
So one thing sorry, sir.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say to that, your term runs with it. So it's, if say you were to vacate it, if somebody's filling in for you, it's only for the remainder of your term. So that's what it's not like 4 years just started over because a new person got appointed. It would just be filling in your term of, say, if it was 2 years left. So I think that's the language
Yes.
here. That's what that's indicating only.
And then your amendment, if I could, Mr. Chair, your amendment just removes the ability for the Oversight Committee to remove somebody.
Based on the current proposed wording there, we actually got rid of paragraph C, so that's why. So if you read the next line, should a vacancy arise, and then it goes into the vacancy of that. But yes, you're correct. It does remove that clause, because as we had it in there, Lisa, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what it was is if they're removed, it went to the county board at some point. Again,
It was for a full hearing,
Yeah.
and we thought that was totally unnecessary.
A little overkill.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Really does clean the rules up, so to speak. Okay, we have a motion in a second. Okay, yeah, we need a roll call.
Cronin,
I
Fieldman, Franz,
Yes.
Baranowitz.
Yes.
Martinovich,
Aye.
McPherson, Mendrick, Scalera.
Yes.
Vesta, Zerwin,
yes.
Berlin,
Yes,
Bloom,
Yes.
all ayes.
okay, so the rules are approved. And regarding items 7A, B, and C, the monthly reports, we have a motion and a second to place the reports on file.
So moved.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. carries. And now for discussion only, item 8A, which is the contract review only. Would anyone like to lead the discussion?
Yeah, this is Anthony. So
Please.
I'm going to turn it over to Dave Jordan, Chairman, who will present to you a few highlights from the contract renewal, if that's okay. And then we'll take questions either directly after or if you have any during the process. We'll
It's slow. Yeah, we have that problem all the time.
Very slow.
Talk to the IT department.
All right, so as Member McPherson said, I'm just going to give you some of the highlights of a high-level view of the contract and what's included in it. We've discussed this here in this meeting. I know 2 meetings ago, we discussed it here after I'd spent some time with the Chief Command Group reviewing this, and the Hexagon provided the Chief Command Group a demonstration of the new products that we're going to cover here on the RMS side at least. And the general consensus from the command group was, yes, let's move forward with this. And I'll explain to you kind of why they said that. The contract itself, there's actually 5 kind of areas that we're looking at. Up here, I only have 4. The 5th one is maintenance. So I didn't cover that in this presentation. They're basically the 4 areas that we're going to talk about is the hardware, software refresh, and installation support services, which is, and then there's the OnCall Records MFR upgrade, which is the big one for us. There's the services for maintenance release, update for ICAD. That's not related to us. That would be ETSB's, basically an upgrade on the ICAD side. And then there is the resident, the RSA services. The goal of this is to roll the services up into this contract. So it's not an every year that we're coming back to the table to renew. The hardware software refresh that is included in this contract renewal basically replaces all of our physical hardware. Comes with 4 virtual hosts per site, site A and site B, and then we have a 3rd site. It also comes with a new storage array, which greatly increases our storage capacity, which isn't an issue at the moment, but it will be as we continue to grow and we add attachments to the system and that type of stuff. And it also includes some new HP switches in the racks. So basically, it's a big rack with all the physical hardware in it is what we're getting with this. Along with the physical hardware is the software. One key thing in the software that I'm looking forward to is the first one there is the KIMP load balancing virtual appliance. Load balancing, in a nutshell, just spreads the user's activity over the multiple servers. So that one server it has too much activity. Also, if one of the servers has an issue, it can reroute it to the users to the other functioning servers. And that's key for us because our current solution doesn't really allow us to do that. It's very basic. So this upgrade here to this new solution, we've delved into the technical documentation with Hexagon, and it looks like it's going to bridge that gap for us and answer that solution. The rest of the software will be upgrading pretty much the Microsoft environment. We'll be going up to Microsoft's Windows Server 2019 data center. The vSphere Enterprise Virtualization Platform is the virtual host that sits on those 4 physical hosts that all of our servers run on. And then we're also going to be upgrading from our Microsoft SQL 2016, which we currently have, to the 2019, the Enterprise Edition. And it's also going to include the software assurance, which allows us to basically add on products for Microsoft into our SQL environments. An example of that would be for our OnCall Analytics. We've had to add a couple features for Microsoft in order for that to work, and that covers those additional features. As far as, like you mentioned earlier, the OnCall Records and MFR upgrade is the big one for us. The OnCall Records. Now, I want to make sure we're clear because when we bought the product, it's WebRMS. And a couple of years ago, but not years ago, a year or two ago, year and a half ago, they rebranded WebRMS to OnCall Records. And it gets a little confusing because when we talk about CAD's, their new version that's coming in CAD is OnCall Records. So technically speaking, we're already on OnCall Records. So when I say OnCall Records, it's WebRMS, just so we're all on the same page. We're in a nutshell, we're going to be upgrading from our current 3.7 version, which is their latest version, up to WebRMS, or sorry, OnCall Records 10.0. The 10.0 version comes with basically a redesign of the user interface. They reskinned the product. One of the reasons they reskinned that is to increase usability and to make the user, make it easier to use, I guess. I'm trying to say that. Their current product, Hexagon has received a lot of complaints from us and other customers about how many clicks it takes to do things. So the idea of this is to streamline that, to bring that down. It also includes some of the items that Hexagon has on their product roadmap. We've never really talked about too much in here about the product roadmap. Hexagon does have a product roadmap looking to the future. A lot of those items on that roadmap aren't necessarily pertaining to us. They're not necessarily all RMS related, and they're all not, even the ones that are RMS related aren't necessarily, pertaining to us here or we use them, but there are a couple that are in there. One of the big things that's in there is the next point there is the report approval process. The workflow, the approval process of the reports, they've completely redesigned how that functions, and that does tie in greatly to the MFR, the next piece we'll be talking about. I'll tell you, the workflow, the submitting and approving process is a major sticking point in our current system. It causes quite a bit of our tickets that we get in as far as support revolves around that. The last point there is customized report output. With the new version 10.0, they'll be switching over to SSRS, which is a SQL. It's a Microsoft tool that allows us to redesign all of our reports that the system outputs. It also gives us complete control of what comes out on those, so we can reduce the length that we're working on already for the state's attorney's office. But we have that control. We don't have to go to Hexagon to ask them to do it for us and go through that. So the upgrade to OnCall Records it's a big upgrade. It's reskinning it. Training wise, I'm not expecting there to be a ton of training needs because it does function exactly like the current OnCall Records. It just looks a little different. So there'll be some training on the user end on how to do that, but we've seen a demo of it and all the major functionality is the same. So it's not going to be earth shattering to our records clerks trying to figure out how to use the system. The big one though is the next point is the mobile field reporting application. FBR, we all know and love FBR. Our field-based reporting application that we have now is going away. Hexagon is sunset that application. They're not, they are supporting it for us. They're not running away from support, but it's going away. And they're replacing it with the MFR, the mobile field reporting application. This really answers a lot of our concerns. Now I'll say this, on paper, it answers a lot of our concerns. We still got to get into functionality of it. The chiefs did see a demo of it, but the major areas that it does actually, that I'm looking for and our users need is it uses the OnCall Records database. Currently, FBR is a separate application. FBR data is in FBR. Our OnCall Records can't see that data except for the draft reports. They can view a PDF of the data that's there, but they have no access to it directly, and that causes a lot of problems. Not really problems, but it was frustration at the beginning of trying to figure out where this data is and how to find it. The MFR application doesn't have its own data. It uses the OnCall Records database. So any report that's in draft, that an officer is working in draft, currently, if it's an FBR and in draft, that data is not in OnCall Records. So if they add an offense to it, and your records clerk has to report that offense through UCR reporting to the state, it's not there. They have to go find it in FBR and pull it in. Moving forward, that won't be the case. If they're writing a draft report in MFR, all the data they enter and they hit save, it's available in OnCall Records. It's one database. You can, if you want to look at it, the OnCall Records is the base. MFR kind of sits on top of it, but it accesses that same data. And that's a huge win for us as far as this new application. There are some other benefits that greatly will help us. One was, we mentioned before, the workflow process, the approval process. The approval process, the database, the data issue, and my third point there of simplified data entry. Those are kind of the three main grouping areas that we generally have when it comes to trouble tickets and issues with the system. That's where my staff spends most of their time trying to resolve those things. So this application is set to resolve that. The simplified data entry, right now, there's a lot of scrolling. If you talk to any of our officers, they'll tell you there's a lot of scrolling. Well, the MFR, there's no more scrolling. It's a modern application. It's on modern technology. It's tab-based. There's also the ability to bring in more data into the report from OnCall Records because it's using the same database. So it's a streamlined data entry. The other thing about their data entry screen is, again, it's on modern systems, or it's all Microsoft based, and we have complete access to that and control. We can customize these to what we want them to be. Currently in FBR, if we want to customize something, we have to go to Hexagon, and then we have to work with them, and they have to make all the changes. We can't make those changes ourselves, and it just delays us getting things fixed or changed back to them, to the users. So the MFR, I will say, is a huge win. I did say, on paper, we did have a demo of it. Hexagon is going to be doing another demo, I believe, in a couple months for the Chiefs Command Group. The Chiefs Command Group has seen it, and they like it. So that's kind of the meat of what I'm looking at from a technical standpoint with this update.
I have a quick question on that. This is going back a ways probably, but weren't there a few towns that were looking at a potential alternative to the FBR 18 months ago? Did they ever look into that? And this
a few back right after, well, it was before the pandemic started. We looked at the process of writing reports in WebRMS at the time and not using FBR. We went and spent some time with Aurora Police Department because Aurora has the RMS, the WebRMS, or the OnCall Records now. And they don't use FBR. And after kind of comparing what they have to go through and what we have to go through, it was kind of the chiefs discussed it and they're like, let's just stay with what we've got. We know what we got. And for the most part, we get into time periods where everything's working well and we're going, and then we'll have some issues blows up around updates and stuff like that. But we're working on streamlining that. But that was, historically, yes, they looked at using OnCall Records only. The state's attorney's office, sorry, I don't mean to point to Jim. The state's attorney's office is the same. They have some investigators and they only use OnCall Records. They don't use FBR for it. So that was what we looked at in the past.
Okay, thank you. Now,
the big thing that everybody wants to know is how much it's going to cost. If in your agenda packet, you have a spreadsheet that I believe was page 53 or 54 in your spreadsheet. Nope, I looked at it earlier. Yeah, there's actually 2 pages on there. Now, let me go back to the presentation and just cover that. And then we'll get into the spreadsheet here in a minute. So this is kind of the 5 areas that I discussed. The maintenance and services are the one we didn't discuss. The contracted price is there. We're only ETSB is covering 70% of that.
Of what?
Of the maintenance, or did I get that wrong?
It's just hardware. We cover 70% of hardware. It would be whatever. I think Hexagon is supposed to give us an actual breakout between the different products.
Okay.
So that might change.
That'll probably change. That's what I've got right at the moment. We're still in the middle of negotiations with Hexagon for this contract renewal. ETSB is. So this is going to change. Once this changes, I will definitely get it updated and out to all of the members. We are only covering 30% of the hardware, as Member Zerwin said. The CAD 9.4 update, we don't have that's not our cost. The OnCall Records upgrade that's the OnCall and MFR upgrade, that is our cost. And then there's the RSA services. The RSA services is, we are covering that 50/50, splitting that 50/50 with DTSB. And this is the overall through 5 years. And these are our costs all over, the ones that are marked 5 years are costs that are spread out over the next 5 fiscal years. So that's the total bill, but subject to change based off of what we get from Hexagon through the contract negotiation. Now, if you look at that spreadsheet I gave you.
Before you leave here, though, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So are all those ongoing costs or some of those one-time costs? What's the breakdown?
The two that are the first, order 1 and order 5 are 5 years. It's broken down over 5 years.
Okay.
Number 2 and 4 are upfront costs that we'll discuss here in a minute when we get to the spreadsheet, because I want to make sure we're.
Yep.
All right, let me. How can I change this over to the spreadsheet? I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but you do have it in front in the agenda.
You can expand it to the plus in the middle. Yeah, next to the hand.
Yeah, no, I'm still blocking my screen. I can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it.
Well, it's just all right, is that better, or do we need to keep going?
We'll look at it from the sheet here.
Yeah.
I think it's page 52.
There's actually 2 pages in there. The first one is 52. I tried to break this down into how the contract is going to first change, affect us for FY22. On our last meeting, we approved the FY22 budget. And I was trying not to do too much in this spreadsheet. So for the FY22, I wanted to kind of focus on that one. If you look at the first items that are highlighted in the yellow, those are all contract related items that we just discussed. You'll see that the order number 2, the hardware refresh is on there, the order 3 is there, and the RSA services. I did not put the maintenance on there because we've already approved the maintenance cost down below, a couple lines down. There's also, through the contract negotiation, there's differences in when these things start. The RSA contract starts on January 1st, but the maintenance, it doesn't start until I think it was June or July 1st. So it kind of puts us off a year. We do pay things on the rears, because ETSB fronts that money, and then we reimburse through these budget transfers. So I tried to kind of separate out FY22 so that you can see what it's going to do as far as our costs. And the one thing I wanted to bring up to the room is this very bottom line here that's yellow. I do have, as we discussed when we did the budget, about paying for the hardware refresh using our equipment replacement fund. When we did that, the numbers have changed a little bit as far as how much it's going to cost. So I took the current numbers based off of contract negotiations that we're doing, and I subtracted that amount out based off of us paying for that out of the equipment replacement fund, so it would not affect, it actually greatly kind of reduces this year's cost for our agencies. But that's why that's there. We'll need to probably do some further discussion on that over the next year to flesh that out before we get to doing any kind of FY22 invoicing. But I just wanted to point that out to you. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
I guess, well, what is the balance? What's the current balance? Do you have that on here?
It's on it was in our last month when we did the project or the budget, FY22 budget. It was in that in that packet. It was about $1 million that we had.
It'll fall at, we're finishing up our fiscal year. It'll be about $1.2 million.
Right, so we have the money in there. It does put us, we've discussed this. It does kind of put us behind in the goal of the equipment replacement fund, which is to get to the 5 years at the end and having the $3 million in the bank. But This isn't set in stone. This is just for discussion, information. This, like I said, this will be stuff that we need to flesh out and make sure we're on the same page. Really, it comes into play more when we get to invoicing at the end of the year and any budget transfers we have to do. But I wanted to show that on here just to get it in your mind so you can see that. For FY 23, 24, 25, and all through 27, these are the contracted prices that we have, and you can see the total at the bottom and the user per user cost for the top section, which is the county's incurred cost for staffing and all that stuff. That was just an increase of 2% from year to year. So make sure that we're adjusting for the general COLA. If the county decides to give us more than 2%, then I'd be, that would change. Or if they decide not to, there've been years when they don't. So I don't think there's ever been a year where they've given us more than 2% for COLA, but that's there. Now, the next page in your packet there, page 53, takes those costs from the first one and breaks it down for each agency, how much it's going to cost them over annually for the next 5 years. Again, these are projections. We'll have, this stuff will be kind of formalized in our budget process every year. So these are the projections out so that you can see it and agencies can kind of see how much it's going to cost throughout the end. Any questions about any of the cost part of this?
Or any of it.
Or any of it?
You have a single page that just compares the budgeted amount to we're looking to spend. See what the differences are
For which year?
for the first year coming up.
For the first year?
Yeah.
I don't have it. I can put it together. I have our budget from last year, or our budget that we approved at the last meeting. I will say, depending on, a lot of that's going to depend on what we end up doing with this last line item as far as using equipment replacement funds to fund that. If we stick with that number, our per user cost goes down to $544 a person, and that's good, $250, $300 cheaper per person for this year, because we're paying a lot of that out of the equipment replacement fund. I did also go back and look at the original cost projections that we did back in 2018 when ETSB renegotiated the contract to include this contract extension. And our per user cost for each year moving forward is pretty much a push. They're equal. I think 1 year, the highest we go over here is like $27 per person over, and 1 year we're about $44 under per person. So it is coming in right at the prices that we projected 3 years ago.
The problem between doing that is we're having some big jumps between 22 and 23. I mean, for some of these agencies, it's like Hanover Park. You're talking about a $20,000 increase from 22 to 23. I'm not sure they're going to be. We can tell them, we can send them this 100 times, but as Linda will tell you,
Well,
it's going to be a shock.
Yeah,
when
because they'll
if
forget.
you look back at the invoicing that we discussed a little bit earlier, there's another spreadsheet in there with the invoicing. Have we done invoicing yet? I'm sorry. For the FY 22 invoicing, they're used to this larger number. They've been paying the larger number. So they're used to it being $20,000 more annually. So there's going to be 1 year where it'll be cheaper, but it'll go back to the normal price.
Well, I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Well, here's the thing, and that's up to this group. That's up to the committee to determine if we do this or don't do this. That's not.
So your recommendation is to, sorry.
No, please.
Your recommendation is to keep it consistent
I-
for budgetary.
That's my personal view. I don't know how the other managers feel in the room. I'd certainly.
That would be my personal view too. If I'm used to paying it, I'll go with it at this point and then see where it falls down the road. But yeah, be consistent.
So,
Jeff, the effect of that then is obviously there's gonna be more money in the equipment replacement fund. Okay.
So it's not, it doesn't hurt us by doing that, because we
Into
get
the
the
$3
money.
million requirement a lot quicker by doing that, right?
Not, I mean, you're only talking about, well, yes. If we use the equipment replacement fund to just pay for the goal is to use the equipment replacement fund to basically pay for order 3 and order 5. And order 2, because those are the one-time costs that aren't spread out over the 5 years.
Well, I'm not sure if these guys have been sorry.
Just gonna ask, do you know what the cost per user is if we don't use the funds from the capital?
isn't it close to the
750.
750 per, yeah.
I can pull the actual spreadsheet up and
And another way to go about it, though, is still realize the savings, just smooth it out over 5 years. We don't necessarily want to.
and then
Either way, I think it's just
You
some
just look for
stability.
consistency.
Right.
Maybe that makes it more.
I mean, this is going to be a discussion item, I think, for every board that sees that number. Wants to know why the big
all right,
change.
so this is the actual spreadsheet that I've got built out. So you're saying if we removed that payment of the 600,000 out, or 686,000 out of the equipment replacement fund, or reduce that? So I'm just going in. So if we change this to if we change it to $400,000, it bumps up our per user cost to $709, which is more in line with what's going on. Or we can, it just depends on how you want to play with that number. Now, if you also look along the bottom here, this is not in your spreadsheet, but because I did this after speaking with Member McPherson, this is the variance off of what was projected back in 2018. So you'll see the highest one is we're $21 over what we projected 3 years ago per user. The lowest one is we're $43 under. So the costs are pretty much the same as what we projected 2018. Now there's also, we can get into this more probably in the future, is how these things are lined up annually, because the RSA contract is January 1st and the maintenance contract is June 1st. I did shift that out some because of the because of when it's due, when the bill's due, and when ETSB pays it, and when we have to reimburse ETSB. So it's in the right fiscal year for us expending the money.
So a couple things, Dave. So back to the original point of making the payments consistent year over year for the next 5 years. We can do that, right? And the additional funds will then go to the equipment replacement fund. Is that what happened?
For this year, yes, sir. Or we just don't charge the agency back and we let them keep the money. It would be the other option, but no, that doesn't work because we want to keep the cost separate. That's Jason behind you. Sorry. So yes, sir, it would go into our equipment replacement fund.
What happens if you were to lose one of the agencies on your next sheet? What does that do to everyone else?
It's a cascading effect. It'll drive the cost up for the other users.
Even if you're eliminating that 60,000, 50,000, whatever it is, it's not per user, then it's overall.
You divide by the number of users. So if you eliminate 40 users, then.
Okay.
The per user cost goes up.
Yeah, you just absorb it.
If 1,040, then it, yeah.
We still have some variables here, right? Because on your PowerPoint, you weren't sure about them on the maintenance.
Correct. We still have to, well, for FY22, not necessarily.
Okay.
Because FY22, if you look up here at the top here, I don't have any maintenance cost in this one because the maintenance and the contract starts June 1st, 2022. It's not, I'm trying to line it up and I may have lined it up wrong as far as when the bills actually come in and are due. But if ETSB is paying that and agencies are paying that back in 2023, I put that cost in 2023. So this year, our maintenance cost is known of the 461. So for FY22, the maintenance cost, we know that.
So my follow-up question was, does it make sense for us to make all of the contracts coterminous so that the payments are even?
We'd have to, I don't know. And one of the reasons I think, and when Member Irwin can probably fill this in. Is this where we're addressing the issue of our maintenance running out before our contract does? So what we're talking about is in the contract, the restatement, the RSA's agreement starts January 1st. And that's because our previous contract with them for the RSA ends December 31st. But the maintenance portion isn't scheduled to start, I believe it's June 1st. So there's 6 months, it's kind of 6 months later. Now, we're having some discussions early on in contract negotiations with Hexagon about an issue of our maintenance actually running out 6 months before our contract ends. So I don't know if this is what was done to resolve that, because we didn't want to have 6 months on the end with no maintenance. So I'm not sure how that all plays out, but
We can take it offline and then evaluate whether it makes sense to do it or not, and come back to the committee and give them the pros and cons.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
And we're all for the county doing the best that you guys always do with economies of scale and negotiating the best deal. And this is a huge contract with a lot of members and guaranteed 5 years. So whatever you guys can do on our behalf, go after it.
I think, you know, a lot of this is already in the amendment. The changes you see here are based on the RSA change. And then from when we did the amendment, the RMS folks, you had NIBRs and a few things that were added. So this is where you're seeing some of that change. And then what Dave was talking about is hardware support. And there was a glitch there that we just were negotiating out of. Not my issue, you know, they should support it. So we've worked through that. So, and yeah, I think we could take it offline because ETSB covers the whole contract. So when and how you invoice this group is, I think, something that Jeff Martinovich will want to take on in terms of how we clean that up for the auditor and our external audits so that we're all squared away. Nobody has a finding as to money hanging out there.
Well, let's just be clear, we're talking about invoicing, we're getting ready to do that. What's going to be invoiced again, Dave?
It's in your spreadsheet there. Well, it was one of the agenda packet items. No, it's not that one. The invoicing is a different agenda item, and it's under the other.
Is this the projected agency cost breakdown at FY21?
Yeah, so this right here is what we put together. It's 8B, so it's not under 8A, so it's coming up next.
No, I think we're probably ready to move on to AP, right?
We are now.
Discussion,
See, I've only been in meetings. since
robust
8 o'clock.
discussion.
Jeff wants to talk as long as he can.
So I do have one other question.
Sure.
Crystal ball question. So let's say we get this negotiated I know it's hard to project, but 5 years from now, is it guaranteed that we're going to need to go and buy a whole new software, or is it possible that we would be doing a similar process, upgrading, keeping the same software at a similar cost and pushing that ball down the road for another 5 years?
So I think both options are possible. I do think that typically over time, software increases.
Right, yeah, there'll be some costs.
So
Sure.
even if we do the upgrade 5 years from now with the Hexagon solution, there'll be some increase in the cost that we have to absorb. But at some point, we have, we could take a full look at the software, decide on whether we want to renew or find something that's consistent with the CAD solution.
I just don't think it's absolutely critical to have the 3 million in the bank 5 years from now. It'd be nice to have as much as we can, but again, we've got some options even 5 years from now. So that was my other point.
I think we could probably, the goal of this originally was to make this group self-sufficient from ETSB for various FCC guidelines and things like that. So the 3 million was based on what we knew at the time, that's, and how that works. So as this process evolves, it's something to think about, but that's part of the IGA.
It's
So,
part of the, right.
so we have, but you have 5 years more to get there now at this point, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
could we possibly just all kind of be in consensus on this, so staff has a direction on what they need to accomplish for the next meeting? As I'm being asked by the IT director.
Yeah.
That's mostly why I'm asking it.
We've had a really long discussion. We want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I mean, does anyone disagree? We kind of have a consensus. That we're going here.
Verify the numbers, take a look at how we can maybe even that out over the 5 years so that paying agencies aren't going to see a volatility and bring that back. And I think that's what we're expecting. I don't know what we want to do.
Yeah, project updates, HC.
Well, I can tell you that, Emma McPherson and Dave Jordan and I and some ETSD folks are, and Delta Works, like Galvin, who's been brought in for this, have meetings scheduled before the end of the year with Hexagon, because the goal is to bring this contract to the ETS board, which is part of the reason we're having the discussion today, so you have an idea. So I think you do need to see the final costs. The numbers, the same, the percentage, I think might change a little bit. And we only have to be a little more specific of that because of FCC guidelines. In the past, we just sort of, in the first go around, it was a really long involved spreadsheet and it was easy to see what was charged to what in terms of maintenance, which is how we got those numbers. So I don't know that it'll be that much more than what you're paying now, but we'll take a look. Because I think you need that number to be so that the users have an idea of what their costs are going to be, plus or minus.
Anything else?
That's going in January to ETSB.
Yes, that's the goal. That was the goal. I don't, if we make it, there's some things that we're still talking about that we're not happy with yet. And if we're not happy, then it doesn't go. But we wanted to bring it here so you have a leg up on what's happening because you have to pay for it. So.
Appreciate that.
Okay. Any old business?
It's a tag team.
I appreciate the PowerPoint too. That makes it much easier to follow.
Good.
Can you send that PowerPoint to me, Dave?
Yes, we'll send it out to the board and include it in the minutes.
All right, do we have any old business? Any new business?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman?
All- Yes.
We've actually, there's a couple agenda items that we haven't addressed yet. 8B and 8C.
Oh, I thought we were.
Did we do the invoicing one? And then there's the projects update, the project
Yeah, we
updates.
just-
So close.
Sorry. I can go through them real quick. I mean, unless,
No, I thought we just did. Go ahead.
okay, so the invoicing, county finance is looking basically to this, it's informational that they're gonna be sending out invoices for FY21. In your sheet, in the packet on page 54 is kind of the cost breakdown, the actuals versus the budgeted amounts. In a nutshell, we're down 4% over what we budgeted for, what our actuals are. The next page on that, 55, is what your agencies will actually end up being invoiced. We are currently running an official user count, requested agencies to get their updates in to us by the end of the week. And then once we have our formal account, I'll hand that over to county finance, and then they'll process that and invoices will be sent out.
So if we do that, is that gonna, then it's gonna be a lower cost for everybody. We might have this issue we're concerned about.
No, this is last year's
previous
cost.
year.
Has nothing really to do with projections going forward. This is just actuals versus what we budgeted for FY '21. Okay.
Fair enough.
All right, the last thing I had, I'm sorry, I don't need to.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Okay.
I think that's the goal here.
That's the goal. All right, so we'll make this quick and easy for you. I'm going to skip a couple of my slides, just so we get to the point. Come on, here we go. All right, so moving forward, we're going to be with member McPherson here. We're going to be, I'm sorry.
Just expand
Oh, I'm sorry.
it so they can see.
We're going to be kind of readdressing how we're communicating with information out to our agencies and kind of rethinking our current setup. And part of that is going to be consistent updates on projects we have going on. We have the 2 projects going on. The first one is the Illinois NIBRS reporting tool. And then the second one is our OnCall Analytics product. You guys are familiar with those. We talked about those a lot, so you kind of understand what they are. As far as Illinois NIBRS, this is kind of a status report of where we're at. It's installed in our test environment. That is completed. We have been given the internal codes from Hexagon that we have to review to make sure our codes line up with the Illinois State Police's requirements for the Illinois NIBRS version. It's kind of a 2-part thing. We're doing an internal code review that's right now, targeted to be completed 12/27. We also have to do an offense code review, and that is going to involve records clerks and agency staff. And that review, the state has increased their offenses from about 372 to 870 something. They've defined, they didn't increase it, they just defined additional ones that we need to make sure that we don't get a lot of say in those because the state hands them to us, but every agency needs to know this change is coming. So we're going to include agency staff in that discussion and through that. And then we'll move into our training phase, or I'm sorry, our testing phase. And we'll be doing some internal testing on the tool, and then should tentatively three to 4 weeks for testing. And then once that's done, we'll start the end user training. NIBRS is going to require us to go through a certification process with the state. I've been in communication with our state contact about that. They are going to allow us to certify as a consortium, meaning only one agency has to go through the certification process. The certification process is about a 3 to 4 month process where we send them data, and then they validate it, and we have to be over 95% accuracy in the data submitted. Once they sign off on the one agency, then we're all good. Everybody's good. I do not have that agency identified yet. The state suggests the sheriff's department, but we'll have to talk about that because the sheriff's office does things a little different. But so that's
I
there.
think Hinsdale wants to be there.
Hinsdale.
Even got contacts.
Once we get through the certification process, there is a second part to this project. Kind of phase 2 is the interface with the state, so we can electronically send that. I'm working that with Hexagon parallel to this, but we can't really do much until this is done at this point. So once that's done, agencies will be able to report to the state no matter either they download the file and upload it to the portal or what have you, but the interface is coming along with that next. The other project to give you an update on is OnCall Analytics Records Essential. It is installed in our environment. We do have licensing squared away. There is a hot fix that Microsoft has released that Hexagon's installed and tested, they've tested it. Now they're installing it in our system. They're supposed to have that done by tomorrow, the 15th. Once that's done by the end of this week, they're also going to have the user permission set up for my staff to be able to actually get into our system. We've done quite a bit of work of analyzing our current reports to make sure that we understand what the agencies need. We have a little more work to do with that to make sure a lot of the data we have is from our original implementation, so we're updating that information. But once my staff can get into there, it comes with cost reports, the kind of their base reports, and I do expect to have to massage those and manipulate those to produce what we're looking for. Ultimately, from seeing those reports during the demonstrations and example reports, a lot of what we need is already there. So I'm not anticipating it to be a ton of work, but there's going to be some things that we have to do to massage those. At that point in time, the system is kind of ours. We're not going to be doing, the earliest we could get the administrative training scheduled was January 11th through 12th. That is a 2-day training. That is not going to it's an admin training, so it would be my staff. I do have a couple agencies that have staff that understand analytics and already do that in their job. They're crime analysts, so they know the products. So I'm going to reach out to them and see if they want to be included in this process, because it gives us that knowledge base. And also they can work that way. It is somebody that to do that though, they have to know the system. It can't be just somebody who knows how to manipulate some simple data in Excel. They have to understand analytics and the Microsoft product because it is technical. But I do have a couple agencies that have that that skill set, in some of their employees that we'll try to include. We'll do our best to include that into this so that we can get that. And then the end user training will actually be virtual. It's not going to be a very in-depth training. We are talking with Hexagon about recording it so that we can do it. I don't know if they're going to let us do that. They've actually pretty much said no, but I'm going to keep pushing it with them to see if we can record it. That or I'll just set my cell phone up there and record it. But it's about a 4-hour training for the end users. It's basically the nuts and bolts of how to get into the system, how to run the reports, how to do some basic custom report stuff that they want to do. So that's the idea for this, and what we've expressed to Hexagon is our agencies have to do statistical reports for their command staff and for their village boards and stuff. So we're cutting it kind of close, getting to here, but we should be able to fulfill that. And there are some agencies that report earlier, like Addison Police Department reports earlier. So I'm going to be working with Addison to make sure that we're on track with what they need. And I'm going to reach out to other agencies as well that I know that do things a little bit different than the norm. Any questions about those the two projects we've got going on?
Good update. Thank you.
Thank you.
And like I said, we're going to start packaging this up a little differently, a little more thoroughly, and we have a new chairperson for the Chief Command Group, Deputy Chief Kurt Vavra. With his addition and with Member McPherson's addition to this whole mix, we're rethinking the whole communication process and how and when things are sent and who it's sent to. And this will be a part of that.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. I think
Motion to adjourn.
we adjourned. We have a motion.